Welcome to another episode of the Doctors Building Wealth podcast. We are so excited to have Jacob Liberman joining us today. He is an optometrist and has written some really phenomenal books. I am especially a huge fan of his book, Luminous Life, How the Science of Light Unlocks the Art of Living. And Kenji and I invited him to be here on the podcast today because I think he has so much wisdom to share. I've watched an interview with him and just was blown away by how he kind of leads his life moment to moment. And so I think we have a lot to learn from him about finding and creating a fulfilling life more than anything. So thank you, Jacob, for being here.
Thank you, Kenji, and thank you, Letty, for embracing me and inviting me in to share this wonderful time together.
So, Jacob, just because people may not have read your books yet and know you, can you tell everyone a little bit about you and your journey to where you are today?
Sure. I was born in Havana, Cuba. I was born there because my parents escaped from Eastern Europe in the 20s as children and individually found themselves in Havana, where they met and lived for 30 years. And my sister and I were born there. We immigrated to the U.S., Miami specifically, in 1955, before Castro. So that's the beginning of my journey. I've always been very inquisitive, and I've always been interested in truth. And when I say truth, I don't mean most people's definition of what's true for them or what a scientific theory is. I'm talking about truth beyond opinion, talking about something that is fundamental to this entire universe, the way our bodies run, and so on. And I was always struck by that biblical expression, the truth shall set you free. So most of my life has been about looking for that in one way or another. I was a kid with a reading problem. English was my third language, not my first. And between difficulties in school and so on, some miraculous way I got to where I am. You mentioned that I'm an optometrist. Well, I was an optometrist and vision scientist for many years. I stopped practicing in 1986 because I saw the medical field moving in a direction that didn't feel like what brought me there to begin with. My love throughout my life is helping, and it is pretty much what consumes my life today on a daily basis. And some way or another, through a series of many, maybe thousands of experiences, I have found my way to a place where most of the time I'm not aware of any chatter from the mind. And most of the time I feel really content. And so that's a little bit about my past, but I've gone through so many iterations, from being a high-level competitive athlete to singing rock and roll at a certain point in my life. The thing I enjoy the most is noticing what's looking for me and allowing it to take me to a mysterious place like what we're doing today.
So let's talk about that, because that's what I really wanted people to hear from you, was about how the light catches your eye. So can you kind of explain what you mean by that and how you think through it?
Sure. We've all been conditioned to believe that we're supposed to make something happen. We have to do this, and this to become successful at life. And we eventually realize that the doing of this, and this is very stressful, and it's quite tiring. And this idea of making things happen, what I began to notice is this expression like, what's catching your eye? Why would something catch our eye? Well, something obviously would catch our eye because it's looking for us. And so what I realize is, we have all these terms today, being present and making the right choices and so on. Very few people, I feel, have actually examined some of these basic conditioned responses that we've all been trained to do and actually ask, is that true? Is the mind this tool that we're supposed to continually use and make choices with and Then if we make the right choices, we've got the secret, but if we don't, we're going to end up is that actually what's going on? Or is there a reason why the expression I think essentially means I don't know? Is there a reason why when you put the word belief into a thesaurus, you get thought, idea, concept, theory, hypothesis, things that are continually changing? But when you look at the antonyms of the word belief, fascinating, there's a word there you would never imagine, truth. And so then you have to start looking are the thoughts that we are all addicted to continually interacting with? Is that what's really guiding us, or is there something else? Now, you're both physicians, and prior to emerging from our mother's womb, we're in some sort of a liquid-filled bubble, if you will. The water breaks, out comes little Jacob or whoever the child is, and magically something begins breathing it. Something begins to regulate its heart, its blood pressure, its everything. And that same something continually does that for our entire life until our very last breath. And from my investigation into how our body works, I don't believe there's a single aspect of our system that's designed to do. What it is continually doing is responding to a world that is continually changing. I don't feel has anything to do with the mind or making choices. It occurs probably at the speed of light, levels we can't even begin to imagine. To give you a sense of what I mean, we've all heard the word intuition, which is a level of vision beyond being able to see forms in the world. Jonathan Swift once said, real vision is the ability to see the invisible, maybe to see what we intuit. Now, when we hear the word intuition, most people say, oh, that's a feeling, or that's a this, or that's a that. No, it's way, way, way beyond that. And I'll give you a quick example and then give it back to you. The retina of the eye has about 135 million photoreceptors. They are cells that are designed to interact, to detect and respond to light. 95% of them are called rods. They're very sensitive and very active in the evening. They sense very subtle things even before we see them. And about 5% are called cones, and they are sort of like the mind's eye. Those are the ones that say, I like that one over that one. But let's look at the 95% because there must be a reason why 95% of the retina is populated by rods. Rods are very interesting. We speak today about quantum mechanics very often and how it might play into our health and our life. The rods are the most sensitive biological cells on the planet. They are more sensitive to light than any technology that we've ever developed. A single rod can detect and respond to a single photon of light. Now, a photon is not a thing. A photon defines invisibility. And so what that lets us know is we're actually designed to detect and respond to things before they appear to us in physical form. Why do we have something so sensitive within us that guides every move we make, which is our vision? Because our survival depends upon it. It's the most fundamental aspect of our nature, is something that is guiding our survival to keep us safe, guiding our survival. Well, all the doing which we do from the mind is what we think we should do, where we think we should go. I think it's an interesting experiment to do for all of us who are scientists in one form or another, which is to see how life continually attracts us to things that its intelligence knows is the next aspect of our life's curriculum perhaps so we can fulfill our reason for being. And so, how do we live without doing? The doing automatically gets done. Just like the doing of our physiology is going on 24 hours a day, whether we're asleep or awake, makes no difference. And so I have been investigating that for several decades now because I had experiences that led me to realize that I didn't really know what was going on. I had a lot of ideas, but they weren't actually affirming what was going on. And so, from having a miraculous shift in my eyesight of 47 years ago, which is still there without doing anything, to many, many other experiences on a daily basis that make me realize that something is guiding not only every step of our life, but something is guiding every step of everything's life. The tree never has to think about, oh, should I grow up or should I grow down? Something is moving it in the direction so it can fulfill our reason for being. Each of us might have a very different purpose. Maybe that's why some of us are artists and some of us are natural athletes and some are naturally brilliant in the classroom. There's a job for everyone.
Now, as you can imagine, us physicians are often overachievers and very taught to do, right? And all these hoops we have to jump through even to get to med school, get through med
Right.
school. So how does this look in practice? How do you shift this? And how do you lead your day? Because I think so many of us are like looking 12 months ahead, setting 12-month goals. Like what's this alternative look like in practice?
So when you say, how do you shift this? What you're essentially saying is, what do I have to do?
That's right.
And what I want to share is there's no doing required. It's almost like if something in my ceiling started to fall down, the moment my peripheral awareness sensed it, my arm would go up to protect it from hitting me. There's nothing I have to do. It occurs automatically. There's not even a conscious choice. This is happening at a totally unconscious level. Now, you know, as a physician, that most scientists would agree that well above 95% of all the actions of our body we're totally unaware of. They don't occur because I've decided to do something. They're occurring under the radar. So how do we get there? We need to experiment. It isn't about a technique. You know, it used to be, well, you want to get enlightened, which means you want to wake up. You need to meditate 20 minutes twice a day, or you need to become vegan, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. And of course, being a scientist and wanting to learn, I did it all. I not only tried every diet you can imagine, I stopped eating altogether for a lengthy period of time to see, well, was there something there? And what I've come to realize is every waking moment, something enters our awareness from where we do not know. That's what I call catching my eye. And what it does is it causes a reflexive movement. It's involuntary. The eye turns to whatever it becomes aware of. And keep in mind, the cells of the eyes, the rods specifically, are picking up things at levels we can't even begin to measure. And so that connects us with something. It moves our eye towards something. The body then automatically and involuntarily also moves. And when that alignment occurs, that is presence. It's not me being present or me doing something. It is a connection between whatever the intelligence of life is that's guiding everything, including the movement of the planets and the tides and the seasons, and moving us. What is it moving us toward? Our maximum potential, because it has our survival in mind and it also has our purpose for being in mind. And so how does this play out on a daily basis? I often say now, you know, I do my best work out on the streets. And people say, well, what do you mean? I said, you know, I go to a local little coffee shop a few minutes from my home each day, and something occurs there and everywhere else that I am where something grabs my awareness. It enters my awareness and moves me towards someone or something. It not only moves me physically, it animates my speaking. So, for instance, right now it sounds like I'm speaking and sharing all these ideas. I don't have the slightest idea what's coming out of my mouth. And to give you an example, in 1977, I was asked to do a talk, an hour talk, for a group of master's and PhD level students in learning disabilities at Florida International University. And we didn't have computers at that time. And so I used to write everything out on little 3x5 index cards because I wanted it to be perfect. That's the way I was trained. It had to be perfect. And yet I was talking about things that I knew by heart. But my mental set was, I got to write everything out so I don't miss a detail. And so they introduced me. And of course, in those times, a speaker was always on a stage above the audience. And there was always a podium there. And the purpose of the podium was to make sure that no one noticed that you were reading your cards. And so they introduced me. And as I walked out, all my 3x5 index cards fell on the floor. And I went into a cold sweat. I mean, talk about an instantaneous panic attack. And I was sweating and I couldn't utter a word. I couldn't remember even why I was there. And the audience was looking at me with looks like, what the hell's going on? And after a few minutes, I took a breath and I said, let me tell you what just happened. And I shared with them what I just shared with you. The ordinary things that all human beings do every day because we're afraid that things are not going to work out. And so we do all kinds of little things to give the impression of this when actually something else is going on. And after I shared that, the whole audience started laughing, and I thought they were laughing at me. And then someone said, happens to us all the time. And then I realized, oh my God, we're all suffering from the same disease. We've been led to believe there's something wrong with us. And so we have to think ahead, try harder, plan every damn thing, because that's success. After that little interaction, something started speaking me. And it was supposed to be a talk for about an hour. They didn't let me leave for 3 hours. And that was the very last time I ever prepared a public talk. And I've had the pleasure of presenting in front of more than 2,000 audiences. And it's like so magical to actually go in with your hands empty rather than full and seeing what actually occurs. Do you end up like a bumbling fool? Or do you share something that is so beyond anything you could have ever prepared? And so that experience, along with all the public speaking experiences and all the lovely things that happen for me each day, where someone maybe who is bringing me food at a restaurant or serving me a cup of coffee or opening the door for me, or every time I see that, it stops me in my tracks. And all of a sudden, I am moved to share with that person my gratefulness, my appreciation. Please thank your parents for doing such a good job. I don't know how it comes out, but it happens every single day so many times, and I feel like a philanthropist without money. Rather than thinking that I'm helping because I'm making donations of financial assets, seeing the essence of another human being doing a beautiful job. And I can't even tell you the ways that this shows up, but well, I'll share it quickly. So I've had a pinched nerve in my neck for several months, which has been quite excruciating. And one night, about 2 weeks ago, I'd finished dinner with my lovely wife, and the pain started to come. And all of a sudden, what came to me is, oh, I'm going to Paia, which is a little town on Maui, and I'm going to get an ice cream cone. I got in the car, I drive down, I park the car, and I go into this cute little ice cream shop where they have normal gelato and gelato that's made from coconut milk. And so they happen to have a flavor I like, so I got that. I'm sitting outside enjoying my cone of ice cream. And all of a sudden, someone walks by, and I see like a little extra pair of legs. I didn't know what it was. And immediately my head moves up, and it's a young mother, maybe she's 32, 33, carrying a child that's probably 4 or 5 years old. Immediately, I said, "Hey," and they turned around, and I said, "I'd like to buy you and your daughter an ice cream cone." And she says, "Hold on a minute." And they run across the street. A few minutes later, they come back by, and they're just walking by me. And I said, "Do you know why I wanted to buy you an ice cream cone?" She says, "No." I said, "Because you're a great mother." And I said, "I know from great moms. I had a great mother, and I'm a great mother. In fact, when my kids were really young, they often called me mommy. And for me, I thought that was like the Nobel Prize. And so I just wanted to thank you for doing the most difficult job in the world in such a beautiful way, carrying your child." So I bought them ice cream. They went on. I finished my cone, and I walk about 20 feet away, and there are two people looking at the window in the front of a restaurant. And I thought they were perhaps looking at the menu. And what comes out of my mouth? "The food is really good, but make sure you get an ice cream cone when you finish." And the guy turns around and he says, "Why?" I said, "Well, I get the feeling you deserve it." And so we start to talk, and I'm wearing a baseball cap that's pale blue, sort of like the color of my eyes, and it has the name Makawa, which is this little town very near where I live. And he says, "God, I love that hat. I love the color, and Makawa is one of my favorite little towns here." I said, "Well, I bought it there. It's only 6 miles up the road. You could get it in the morning." And he says, "Shucks." And I said, "What's the shucks about?" He says, "Well, we're leaving in the morning." I said, "Oh, that's great." And the guy says, "What do you mean it's great? I can't buy the hat." I said, "That's right. But now I have the pleasure of giving you my hat." And the guy doesn't know what to do, and he tries to pay me $20. I said, "Well, one, I don't need the $20, but thank you." And I said, "And my hat is not for sale. I want the pleasure of giving it to you." And he couldn't quite get what was going on. And then, whatever it was, he ended up saying to me, "You know, I've never met anyone like you." And then after that, he hugged me, he kissed my head, "Thank you, brother." And I had the pleasure of giving him the hat. Now, those two things happened within 10 minutes of each other. Those are the kind of experiences that I don't know where they come from. Just something moves me, and I allow it to take me where it takes me. And it always takes me to this place where I feel like a bank account of good feelings keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I feel I often get tears because it's so moving for me. All these beautiful opportunities we have to see each other, to connect, even though you don't even know who this person is and they don't know who you are. But all of a sudden you find that you share very similar values or similar interests, and so those are the little things that occur to me throughout my day, whether I am having the pleasure of mentoring someone and helping them with their life, or whether I'm out at a local coffee shop or a restaurant. It's the ongoing background of everything, and that's what guides every step that I take. It's not that I have a lot of plans. I can't remember the fellow's name who discovered the Salk vaccine, but he would say intuition is what tells the mind where to look to next. And so I follow that guidance throughout my day, and it always takes me to something delicious. It never ends up taking me to the wrong place. And it's almost like we have a built-in Jeep that is looking out for us all the time. And so for me, coming into this place of contentment is not because of all the things that I've done or all the books that I have read. It's just for being an ordinary human being. It's just helping someone cross the street that maybe needs assistance. I cannot tell you how many times I buy coffee or something. I mentioned my cute little coffee shop nearby, and a few months ago I was there waiting in line to order a cappuccino, and something caught my attention, and I looked to the right, and there is a lady with someone that I sense was her husband. And they were a couple probably in their mid 80s. And the husband walked behind me, I imagine, to a table to sit down. And the wife reminded me a little bit of my mom because she was a little short lady, walked up right next to me, which is where the pastries were in the display case, and she was looking. And so I bent down a little bit and I said, "Which one do you like?" And she says, "That one." And all of a sudden, the owner, Anthony, says to me, "Jacob, how are you today?" I said, "Great, Anthony." He said, "Your usual, you want a 12 or 16 ounce?" And so we have a cute little conversation. And then I say, "Anthony, would you please slice a generous slice of that beautiful cake for this young woman?" And she says, "You can't do that." And I look at her and I said, "You wouldn't take away my pleasure, would you?" And she said, "Well, no, I wouldn't want to do that." She says, "But I'm married." So I bend down and I said, "I'm married too, but I don't think this is cheating." And those are the kinds of magical moments that are unforgettable to me. They like imprint me with a level of magic that goes on every day, but has nothing to do with sleight of hand. It's nothing that we've learned or something that we're doing. It is our nature. And so, in response to your question, well, how do you get there? What do you have to do? And so on. Nothing but you're required to look and to notice what's actually there rather than what someone else said is there. You have to just begin to notice all the subtleties of life that are often missed in the midst of running around as fast as we can to try to catch up with an imaginary something or other. And, life is integrative. Just the way all of our cells, there's trillions of cells. Each one is complete by itself, but it's designed to be in continual communication and collaboration with every other cell. And then this body, another thing that it looks like it can handle everything on its own, but actually so much of our biology is regulated through our relationships. The feelings we have, the people we resonate with, causes changes in the limbic system from limbic resonance to limbic regulation to limbic transformation, which all of a sudden realizes, oh my God, we've discovered something that I was never aware of, or I was aware of, but I forgot. So many of the difficulties are because we've been conditioned from the time we came into this world in millions of ways, and that conditioning is what has created a persona, which means mask, but we've come to believe that we are the persona rather than that which is peering through the mask. And so one of the discoveries I made years ago when I first started meditating, which I no longer do in a traditional way, but I first was introduced in 1971, and I thought it was all about quieting the mind. And I soon realized I didn't know how to do that. I just couldn't figure out how to do that. And what I discovered in my meditation is that the meditation had nothing to do with quieting the mind. It had everything to do with realizing that we are not the mind. We are that which is aware of or witnessing the activity of the mind. As that realization became more and more real, all of a sudden, the activity of the mind, it felt as though I went to sleep one night and someone took all those surround sound speakers and moved them away and lowered the volume. I remember times in my life where I thought I was going to go crazy because there was so much mental chatter. And now most of the time, it's totally silent. And there's such a sense of peace and gratitude for just that silence. And so I know your podcast is about physicians and professionals creating what is wealth, which we often think of in terms of financial terms. But my sense is that the real wealth is the wealth of contentment, not the joy that comes every so often, but a level of background level of contentment. Thank God I'm alive. Thank God I'm home. And then everything that is emerging from that state is continually nourishing life, maybe in the very, very best of ways. So that's a very long answer to a short question.
That was exactly what I wanted people to hear, was the level of presence that you have, the level of joy that you get in those day-to-day experiences that so many of us miss because we're running around with the goals or what needs to be done,
Right.
and we're not really there. We're somewhere else, and almost I can almost think of it as I think of you, and I wonder what you would think of this as almost living like meditation. Life is your meditation, right? Like
Yeah.
you're meditating while you're present in life.
Yeah, that is essentially it. Our real meditation is the content of our life. That is what is continually allowing us to accommodate the continual changes of life. And the ease with which we are able to move with it rather than being in opposition with it, the ease with which we can flow with it is directly related to our health and our wellness. It's because it is essentially the stress that we say is responsible for 85 to 90% of the illness we have. That stress is essentially when we have an allergic reaction to some aspect of life. And so, if we can begin to see that this is much more mysterious than anything we had ever imagined, and that we are continually being moved from place to place for reasons that we will never understand. And so much of the ideas we have are so simplistic, and everyone's got some sort of technique for how to get there. But there's no there. It's what's always been here. It's what was there when we were children and we had no preferences. When we came into this world, none of us knew whether we were male, female, or somewhere in between. None of us had any identity with a religion or with skin coloration or with any preferences. All of that came in at some later point. But that state of not having preferences or not having things having to be a certain way, it just supports a level of ease that is harmonious with wellness. It's, we take vitamins, we do a million different therapies and exercises and yoga and God knows what. All these things are great because we want to be healthy and live a long life and so on. And yet there's no substitute for having a content existence. That's the best yoga, the best diet. It's all in that where something is flowing easily. And yeah, we have a delicious life.
Well, it reminds me, one of our mentors says that the sweetness of life is in the present. And now, with those examples that you shared, I don't think I fully understood it, but now I understand it. It's in those moments of connection. Also, I recognize that when you're in the present, yeah, there are no preferences, there are no expectations. You're just, like you said, you're just being.
Kenji, one of my favorite written pieces was written about 1800 years ago by a Zen patriarch. It's called the Sin Sin Ming. And the first verse is something like this: "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything is clear and undisguised. Make the slightest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, hold no opinions for or against anything." And it goes on, but it's essentially saying, Jesus was quoted as saying something similar when he said, when you see the outside and the inside the same. When up is down and down is up, when you see a man as a woman and a woman as a man, then you shall enter the kingdom. Another way of saying that when the distinctions or the duality that is created by the mind, when one is able to see something beyond that into a state of oneness, non-duality, everything changes even though you have no idea how. And I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with having this function we call mind. It's just we need to realize what its purpose is and how it can support certain things. But to utilize it 100% of the time is to deny that we're not designed physiologically to actually function in that way. And so just as our eyes just sense things, the only time that a creature in nature looks at something to see its detail is when it feels like its survival is being threatened. And so the part of the eye that's designed to see very fine detail, the reason there's only 5% of those cells is maybe because we only have to use it when there's absolutely a need, but most of the time we can just flow on an intuitive level of knowing without needing to continually check. And so these are the things that I am learning and becoming aware of on a daily basis to be as much of a model of sweetness, of love, of compassion, of caring, of generosity. My parents didn't have a traditional education. They had to survive. They never had large incomes, but they never had debt, and they were the most generous people I ever met. They helped everyone. My mother had cancer 4 times and outlived the first one, which they said she'd live a month, by about 51 years. This woman, who was 4 foot 10 inches tall and had a lot of physical things she had to deal with because of that first cancer, used to take 3 buses in Miami to Jackson Memorial Hospital and walk from one end of the cancer ward to the other, and would stop in every person's room and share something about the miracle she had experienced. And she used to get letters from people all over the world who came there for care, and some way or another they were still alive, and they thanked my mom for the inspiration she gave them. So it's so important to have direct experience. And what I mean by direct experience is unfiltered awareness. We have a moment, like I had with the little lady over the coffee cake. We have an experience that just like, oh my God, it's like falling in love again and again and again. And what happens over time is, without doing anything, we ourselves become a source for that sweetness, and it's like a contagious something that is going out into the world and reminding us to take the time to smell the flowers and to connect with each other. And I'm so happy that I get to connect with the two of you today.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful to get to speak with you and to get to spend some time with you today. Can you tell everyone where they can find a little bit more about you and get to read your books and connect with you?
Books, you get them from Amazon. I'm not a bookseller, so we don't have a lot of products and things like that. So Amazon is probably the least expensive place where you can buy books. My website is jacobliberman.org, O-R-G, and Lieberman is L-B as in boy, E-R-M-A-N. And you can visit. It's not a marketing site. We're not offering this for free in hopes you'll sign up for this. It's just about sharing things that we feel are helpful. And, you can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. I don't know anything about those things, quite frankly, but we try to post things that maybe bring a smile to someone's face. That's really what I sense my purpose for being is. And so that's what I plan to be doing for as long as I'm here.
And please, people, read Luminous Life. I thought it was really a phenomenal book and just echoes this sense of joy and love and everything that you conveyed here today, just in the words too. I thought it was
Thank
so
you.
beautifully.
I'm working on a memoir right now, which we had to stop for a while because I was teaching an online course, but I'm so excited to share a bit of my journey in life, and not only to share many of the things that imprinted me, but also to demonstrate the amount of change that has occurred in the world around us. I'll be this month. We're in November already. This Sagittarian is going to be 78 in 3 weeks. I want to just keep bringing joy or sweetness or inspiration or whatever you want to call it into the world, and to do it as just one human being to the other, like friends.
Thank you, Jacob.
You are so welcome. I'm so grateful. Of course, when you first reached out, I said, why do they want to talk to me? They're into something very different. And yet at the same time, I realize there's a thread that runs through everything, and especially things that are good. Just a few moments ago, while conversation was coming through, I remember you said something in the beginning about real estate, and I guess some investments having to do with real estate. And I don't know why, but real estate came up. And what came to me immediately was, for me, even though I'm not involved in real estate, it's less about getting a great deal, and it's more about doing something where both of us, if there's two people, leave feeling like, oh my God, that was something special. Where the opportunity to do something in a new way that is mutually beneficial. I love that opportunity. I'm so grateful for this morning, and the two of you are so sweet, and I'm so grateful. Yes. And when you said you were in Puerto Rico, I immediately was taken back to my Cuban roots and my enjoyment in dancing with my wife. And so I'm so glad that Latin heat is still there. Well,